This is talkSPORT's Women's Football Show on talkSPORT 2. I'm Leanne Sanderson. I'm delighted to say it's the first show of the year. Had to get footballing expert and former Leeds player Lucy Ward on. Lucy, it's been a crazy summer. I cannot believe the WSL is back this week. How are you doing? How's your summer been?
Yeah, I mean, summer brilliant. I was at the Euros. I was in Switzerland for most of it, and just yeah, what a summer it was. And so many points during the summer, I just thought this is not going to happen. And when it did, it was just like you look back and think, yeah, that was meant to happen. That sort of, all the different traits that Lionesses team showed, and yeah, wonderful. And Switzerland did it very, very well, and it was another exciting summer.
Yeah, I mean, it was just unpredictable, wasn't it? It was fantastic. And I feel like it feels like it was forever ago that the Lionesses won. But then I also feel like it was recently. Now, I want to shift our focus on the WSL. We've spoken a lot earlier on this show about the transfers, but like, what have you made of the transfers? I think there's been way more transfers this window than there ever has been. We've seen Olivia Smith, Taylor Hines. There's been some quite surprising ones. I'm quite surprised that Beth Mead hasn't moved on. I know she's been playing of late at Arsenal, but what have you made of the window and, what surprised you so far?
Yeah, I think it's been really exciting to be honest. I think it's indicative of the ambitious window's been indicative of where the WSL is getting themselves to. So the league expansion coming, the increased visibility from television deal, smart recruitment. So you're getting it. Clubs are getting this right. I think bold moves. We look at London City Lionesses. They've gone straight in for depth. Players that you'll have played against and with. Kumagai, Alana Kennedy, Zellum, Van der Donk's gone there. Did I
Yeah.
read that Van der Donk's gone there? Nikita Paris. You look at Arsenal, Chloe Kelly, important that they retained her. Liv Smith, obviously, I'm really interested to see how they cope with her. And like you said, I think Beth Mead, I think she'll probably end up going somewhere. You want to play, don't you? Especially when you come into to the latter part of your career. Leah Velti looks like she's moving on as well. So from Arsenal, I've read some reports there. So
Yeah, to
that'll
go
be
to Juventus.
emotional. Yeah, I think that'll be emotionally because she's a big part of what they've done and where they've got to. Chelsea, strengthening a team that's obviously dominating domestically. Ellie Carpenter, I quite like her. That's a solid signing. And then I look at like Everton. They've refreshed a little bit, haven't they? Japanese internationals, Brighton, loads gone out. Some surprises of going out, but they've started to go global, which is what we're sort of seeing, aren't we? Minami, I like. Who else? Venegas, the left back. Really, really like her. And then domestically, Ellie Roebuck going to Villa. So yeah, it's been an interesting one, but also it's exciting. We get into that level where these are big names again coming in and making it a lot more exciting.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just the WSL to get excited about. Obviously, European football as well. Arsenal winning the Champions League was a massive shock to everybody. I'm still buzzing from that now. Do you think Arsenal have done enough, in this summer? And I agree with what you said there about being able to keep hold of Chloe Kelly, because most people won't be thinking that's a massive signing because they thought she was already going to stay there. But that isn't always the case. So do you
Mhm.
think, like, the Taylor Hines one, I thought was quite strange, to be honest. That one came way out of left field for me. I think she's a good player, but I'm not quite sure she's the type of player they need. But the Olivia Smith one, which has also meant Michelle Agyemang has then gone back on loan to Brighton, which I was also quite surprised about.
Yeah, I think the Adjumang one, I can sort of understand that from a club point of view. What Michelle Adjumang wants to do is play every week. Now, is she certain to play every week with Arsenal with them signing Liz Smith? I'm not sure. And what you want to do is, when you played, when your stock is very high, you don't want to be coming on for 5 or 10 minutes. You don't. The WSL season isn't long enough as it is. Never mind. So you want to be playing, and I think that is quite a shrewd move for all parties, Arsenal, Brighton, and Michelle as well. I think that is good. But when they won, I was working on the Champions League final, and I'm not joking. I was doing the something I've never done before. The going and doing the interviews before and going on the pitch afterwards. Never done it before, and so I was a little bit like nervous. And now thinking Barcelona are good here. In all reality, I prepared myself for Arsenal to lose. So what am I going to ask when Arsenal are losing? That's not disrespectful. That's just the way Barcelona have been. But I tell you what, it during the first half, I'm writing down. Hang on, they're going to win this. I can see them winning this. So I'm writing down
You
the.
actually said that to me. You actually said that
Mm,
to me. I remember when we saw each other because it was the first final we hadn't done together in about three
yeah,
years, I'm pretty sure. So it felt a bit weird us not working the Champions League together, but it was good to see you. And I think you said the same thing. And I was thinking, like, my head and my heart was telling me two different things because we know how good Barcelona were. and are.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Barcelona and I always think the teams that have a solid plan where they get at them physically and use the moments, and that's exactly what Leon did a few years ago, and it's exactly what Arsenal did. And I just the belief, what not surprised me, but what really impressed me about Arsenal was the belief that they had. But I do think that it's about they can attract top names that they're playing at the main stadium. That is so important. You've got Liv Smith, Chloe Kelly, Cooney Cross is going to have an opportunity to go up another level as well. And it just seems like the recruitment is quite strategic. It's not about volume of players because I think that's difficult to manage. It's difficult to manage women. It's difficult to manage men, but it's difficult to manage. When you've got players sat on the bench who are going, hang on a minute, I'm as good as her. It's all emotional. So you've got to be quite strategic. And I think that, the home games at the Emirates, selling however many thousands of season tickets, I just think there's a real momentum around the club and a real belief that is so key. There's winners in that team, and it is so key.
Now, Lucy, obviously everybody has spoken about the fact that Chelsea can't get this one over the line. And I said, if I was a Chelsea player last year, I'd be absolutely gutted the fact that Arsenal won because, everything's been focused on that. They bring in Naomi Gurma. They bring in so many players to kind of get this job done. Now, I still think they'll win the WSL this season. I just think they've got the depth of their squad. But what do you think it is about Europe that they just can't quite get it over the line? They can't seem to get past Barcelona. They never seem to beat them. They never do. But 8-2 on aggregate in that semi-final, it just isn't good enough, is it? But
Yeah.
what is it about Chelsea and this kind of jinx in the Champions League?
I tell you what, I said the same as you. As soon as Arsenal won it, I was like, this is the worst possible news for Chelsea because Chelsea had us believing that Barcelona were unbeatable. We were all brainwashed into, oh, this is difficult. Leon, this is that nobody's going to beat them. They're just so good and blah. And that's why we all went into the final thinking this is going to be tough for Arsenal. But then all of a sudden, Arsenal beat them, and then everything's blown up in the air. What are we going to think now? And Chelsea be thinking, wow, that is. I mean, it was an incredible performance by Arsenal. I think Renée Slegers. I mean, I met her a couple of times over those few days, and she's one impressive individual. And I love it when someone's quiet, but they are good. She is good, but she does not scream about it. And I think that is, you always be very wary of the quiet ones. And I think that was key for Arsenal, but it left Chelsea in a real position. Like, hang on a minute. It was too difficult. It is too difficult. And then Arsenal made it look like it wasn't too difficult. But they've got, like you say, Lee, they've got depth and experience. They've got a winning mentality that, you cannot underestimate. And nobody in the league has been able to match that consistently. Winning the Champions League, you've just got to make sure on the day you're good on various days throughout the season. But the WSL is all about being consistent, having the depth of the squad. And maybe Arsenal give that bit of belief to Chelsea as well that they can go and do it. And I like Bonpastor. I think that she's stable. I think it adds a bit of stability, long-term planning, the signings that they've made. If they sign Alyssa Thompson, which I've sort of whether that happens or not, can you imagine?
Oh.
My gosh, some of these players that are coming into the WSL. You played a brilliant time for women's football, but even you must be thinking this is just absolutely crazy. But
I did say, Luz, I did say on Sky that I think if I was a player now, it'd be worth at least 5 mil because I think about these and I love it. And I have
yeah,
no animosity. I love the fact the players are fighting. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same. Like the players are finally getting, what they deserve. But I do think the money has got crazy, hasn't it? I mean, Olivia Smith over 1 million, Naomi Gurma. So hopefully that will continue to grow. Something else I want to talk to you about the fact that we've got potentially 3 English teams in the Champions League. We know Manchester United have still got to play Bran over 2 legs. If they do qualify, do you think Manchester United have a good enough squad to be able to compete in Europe?
yeah, I think they've added real quality, haven't they? They've added Rolfer, they've added Vigiotti, who I really like, and obviously under Skinner, they're organised. They all know the way that he wants to play. Brown are competitive, but I do think that Manchester United will get across. But I think you're right. That is the key question. Have they got the depth for Europe? The starting 11 would compete with most teams, across Europe, but Champions League, it tests you. So quick turnarounds, which women's football in the last few years not being as used, quick turnarounds and then not playing for 3 weeks. That has happened in previous years, but this is now, right? We know where we're going to be playing. that no team is particularly easy because all of them are now athletic, which, you never really play against a side that's not athletic. You might be technically better. But I just think that United feel a little bit lighter in terms of squad depth, and they're on a different stage in their development. And maybe another transfer window or two, you would then say, well, actually, can they be up there with, the way that Arsenal and Chelsea go in the Champions League?
Well, Luce, you've got all that kind of expertise out the way. Now, I have to get your expertise on some predictions. Don't worry, I'm going to give mine as well because I think these things can sometimes work in your favour. Sometimes they come back to bite you because we're doing this before a boys' kit. So, I'm going to go straight in there. Who do you think will be getting Player of the Year this year in the WSL?
Um, I'm going to be a bit obvious on a couple of these, and I'll have to say Russo because I just think that she has worked out her position. Playing that position, Lee, that once it clicks and you know exactly where you should be, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and I think that she's at that stage in her career that she knows of the potential, and I think she's very grounded as well, and there's a lot of buzz around her, but she just seems to be, you look at her. There was a moment in the final where the camera went on a close up to her, and she basically just stared it out, just with a little bit of a smirk on her face. And I just think that says everything about her. She's not getting carried away with her little self. She is a good player, and she knows it. And I just think that she's got time to blossom this season again.
It's funny because I actually kind of had a feeling you'd go for Alessia Russo because I was thinking her. And I agree with you. I've always said I want her to have, she's a lovely girl, but I wanted her to have that fire in her stomach, that kind of like ruthlessness. And I think she's brought that. She also looks like she's got quicker, if that was even possible. She looks sharper. I'm going to go with Olivia Smith for my Player of the Year. And it'll be interesting to see how they play because obviously they've got an array of talent in that front nine, Arsenal. I've also gone with Kira Walsh. And I say this because I think since coming back to the WSL, I don't think we've seen the best of Kira Walsh. And I think she's the type of player that doesn't go under the radar. People know just how good she can be, but I don't think it's got going for her at Chelsea yet. But I think this season, she'll have a really good year. So we'll have to wait and see about those predictions. Breakout star, Luz, who are you going for?
Well, I'm going to be obvious on this as well and say Ajimang. I mean, obviously she has already broke out, but I do think that again, it's the coming from young player at the Euros into knowing if she stays fit, she's going to play every single game at Brighton, and it just gives her the platform, the minutes to shine. So I think that she's going to be that.
Yeah, I've gone for Lexi Potter. She spent 2 years out on loan at Crystal Palace. She was the youngest ever player to turn pro in England. And I just think now is her time. Hopefully, I mean, it's going to be difficult to get in that Chelsea team. She's still only 19 years old. But I think having those 2 years out on loan at Crystal Palace could hopefully, because we don't have a lot of young talent in England, do we, Luz? Like, let's be honest, there's
No,
a lot of top quality players, but there's not
no.
a lot of young players. So this one was quite difficult to pick. And Michelle Ajiamang, I agree with you on that one. And we spoke previously about the transfers that we've seen. Who do you think's been the most effective transfer of the window so far?
I tell you what I do like. I like Carpenter at Chelsea. I've watched her for a number of years. I think she's one of those players she never drops below sort of 5 or 6 out of 10. And I think that's the type of player that, especially in the position that she plays. And I think that's just solidifies that Champions League experience that Chelsea had have.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely to see her back because I remember we was in Turin, I think it was, where she tore her ACL in the Champions League final. So it's
Yeah.
always nice to see players come back and do well. I've gone for one kind of way out there, but I've gone from Benet, from Young Boys to Manchester City. Obviously at the Euros, she's 19 years old. We saw how good she was. And I think that's what's good about these competitions in the women's game that kind of put players in the shop window to a certain degree. Now, Luce, these things are difficult for me because I always have about 3 or 4 players I want to choose. And I think
Yeah.
I'm going to go for Danielle van der Donk as well at London City. I think she's a brilliant signing, proven
Yeah.
player that's been there, done that. So I've gone for two. I've cheated a little bit there. I wanted to ask you who you think your surprise package team will be. I think my one will surprise you a little bit.
Right. So I mean, I think the obvious one. I've been a bit obvious, but I think it just allows you to be a little bit way out there. But I think London City Lionesses, newly promoted, but signing good talent, top tier talent. I look at Brighton. They look like they've signed sort of stylish, going on an upward trajectory. They could push, higher than they did, but also a team that struggled last season at times. Villa. They started to improve at the end of last season, and they've recruited smartly. So I'd probably say London City Lionesses, but with a nod to Brighton and Villa.
Yeah, I've actually gone for West Ham, and I say this because they literally blow my mind. I remember doing the game at Dagenham and Redbridge against Chelsea last year, and they got battered like 5-0 just after Christmas. And I was thinking, where does this team go? Then they got Shakira Martinez. Asai, I think, always does well. Ueki. And then I think when Rian Skinner signed that new contract, I was quite surprised because at that time I felt like they weren't in a good spot. But I do think like the biggest problem they have is they seem to get good results against the top teams like City back end of last
Yeah.
season, you know,
Mhm.
Chelsea, United, but then they would lose to teams that were below them like Villa and Leicester. And I'm still waiting for West Ham to kind of push on. They should be doing far better than I think
Yes.
they are. So I'm going to say they're going to be my surprise package of the season. Manager of the year.
Well, in answer to one further down, my manager of the year is going to be Rennie Slagers, and I just think that she will. I'm already impressed with her. I've said that earlier on, but I do think that it's time for Arsenal to take that WSL crown as opposite Chelsea to go for the Champions League. I think that it's time for Arsenal to get themselves back on the top table in the WSL. So Rennie Slagers for me.
Yeah, it's difficult as well because I think Sonia Bonpastor, it'll be her for me, but it's like we shouldn't discredit a team because they keep winning consistently year after year. I'm going to
Exactly.
go with Sonia Bonpastor. Which team do you think will be relegated, Luce?
I can't look past at the moment the day that we're doing this, Leicester, just
Mm.
because it just looks like somebody's come in as sporting director, decided that they don't want that manager, and we're going to bring someone else in, and will that work? You know, there's a lot of emotion involved in women's sport, and I'm not saying that it isn't immense, but connections with a manager is so important. Connections with staff is so important, and I just think that you can't have a tough start. You can't have a bad start in the WSL because you just don't really recover.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I said Leicester for me all day long, but I have to wait and see. Three Champions League spots. I'll go with mine first. I've gone for
Go on.
Chelsea, Arsenal, City. Who are yours?
Yeah, same. I just think that City, it's an opportunity for them to push back. They were close last year. I think they could with the players that they've got, and if they keep the players fit, like Shaw, people like that, then they're up there. So I say those three as well.
And the last question, who is going to win the WSL?
So I think Arsenal, just
Ooh.
because I know I'm going to be different to you. I think they're riding a bit of momentum. They've added some quality. They've had again structurally. Arsenal always led the way with how they developed the women's team, moving to the Emirates. 15K is it season tickets, and they just look in a position that they can challenge. But I really think it's going to be difficult to overtake Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, I love this, Luce, because my head and my heart tell me two different things. I'd love it for it to be Arsenal, but I'm going to go with Chelsea. I just can't see past them. I think if they do bring in Alyssa Thompson as well,
Oh
it'll
yeah,
be on a completely different level. They already are anyway. They've got two, three. They could pick a second 11 and a third 11 and probably still
yeah.
win the WSL. It'd be difficult. But thanks, Luce, for joining me. It's always great to
No
get your
worries.
expertise. And yeah, have a great week.
Cheers, Lee.